Welcome back to the Grow Your Nutrition Business podcast. At Healthy Steps Nutrition, we believe something as fundamental as nutrition shouldn't be complicated. That's why we focus on a simple, habit-based approach. We know that helping your clients become the healthiest versions of themselves isn't just about telling them what to eat. You have to look at a holistic approach, looking at stress, support systems, sleep, exercise, mindset, lifestyle, and of course, nutrition, to help them create a plan that they can stick with and you provide accountability and support. We help gym owners and coaches build successful, habit-based coaching programs without reinventing the wheel. I'm your host, Nicole Coyne, registered dietitian and founder of Healthy Steps Nutrition, CrossFit HSN, and HSN Mentoring. I'm also the author of The Basics of Nutrition Coaching, CrossFit Preferred Nutrition Course. In this podcast, I'm going to teach you how to take one step at a time to build a successful habit-based coaching program where you finally feel confident talking about nutrition to your members and your communities. Today's guest is such a special person. I can honestly say she helped me and Jason get through some of the toughest times that we had in 2021. Her name is Michele Norris. She's actually a family friend of Jason's for a really long time. I've known her for quite some time going to the family holidays, but this year we got to be exceptionally close. She owns a company, a leadership company, where her mission is to help her clients attract, retain, and empower the workforce of the future by developing its leaders. Michele is a navigational facilitator who specializes in executive and leadership coaching, corporate culture, generational education, and strategic leadership. She spent 30 years in sales leadership working for companies like ADP, OfficeMax, and many others before she founded her own company in 2009. She is absolutely incredible. She's one of the best leaders I've ever met, and I am so grateful that she is a mentor of mine. In today's episode, we discuss what's broken with corporate leadership and why she left her corporate job to open up her own business to empower true leadership. We also talk about the experience Jason and I had as we wrapped up the 6-week intensive training called Positive Intelligence. It was pretty interesting, and it really did help us get through some tough times and understand why we react the ways we do, and be able to understand why other people react the ways they do. We also talk about some tips for great leaders, and we also, at the end, talk about how she helps leaders. This is an amazing episode for any type of business owner, and I really hope that you enjoy it. Make sure you stay tuned till the end, where I talk about some leadership books and podcasts that I highly recommend you listen to if you are looking to develop as a leader. We'll get to this episode right after this message. Are you loving this podcast? Please don't forget to subscribe and leave us a review. The goal of this podcast is to empower gym owners and coaches to build awesome nutrition coaching programs. And we want to reach as many gym owners as we possibly can. So if you know a gym owner, go ahead and share it with them. Take a screenshot, share it on social, and please don't forget to tag me, Nicole_RD_HSN. All right, enjoy this episode with Michele. Michele, thank you so much for coming on the podcast today.
Absolutely. I'm delighted to be here with you, Nicole.
We've gotten so close over the past year, and I could not be more thankful for you. We've known you for a while. You're a family friend. And I knew that you did a lot of stuff with leadership, but I didn't really know what you did until Jason reached out and was like, Nicole needs help. And we jumped on a call, and I remember just crying on Zoom, and you were like, Nicole, what brings you joy? And I've remembered that quote for so long. And at that point I was like, I don't even know.
Yeah. Yeah, you're in a tough spot.
And then you said, well, what brought you joy before? And I said, talking to gym owners. And you said, well, you need to get back to that. And I went on a quest to get back to talking to gym owners since then.
That's right.
And
look at your joy. Look at your face.
I know. It's just, I think, we've all been through so much over the past couple years, and so many people don't know how to handle it. And as a leader, I think you put even more pressure on yourself that you have to have all your stuff together, and we don't. And I think you've worked with so many people to help them be able to identify emotions and
work through it to be able to lead their teams and live a more meaningful life. I would love for you just to spend a couple minutes. Tell me about your background before you were doing all the awesome things you're doing now.
Sure. Well, I spent 30 years in corporate America in sales leadership. So I worked for really, really big companies in the trenches and did it for a really long time, led teams, loved, that was my favorite part of my job always was the interaction with people that I worked with, even though I had a different role to grow sales. But the interaction with my teams was the best part. And what happened to me is I started to hire my first millennials in about 2003, 2004, and I was an epic failure. I was just a failure. I lost some really amazing people because I didn't know how to lead them. And so I began to research and learn a little bit about what the heck was going on. I'm a boomer. I've been in corporate America since 1979. And I was like, when you, okay, there we go. Since the day you were born, the year you were born, the year I was married. And so that's an important date for you and I. And so I just had to figure out what was I doing wrong? What was happening? And I started to research what was happening in the workplace. And we were getting ready to this massive, what I call a demographic tsunami of change. And we switched our workforce in 15 years from boomers being the large majority to millennials, and now Gen Z being the largest majority, and then Gen X, poor Gen X, God bless you all, in the middle. And so I knew that things were going to get intense from a leadership perspective pretty quickly, and that I had some insight about what we needed to do and how we needed to lead differently. And based on my failures and what I learned. And so I made the decision, well, actually I was helped a lot with my organization too, to get a package and get the heck out. And so I did, and then I started my company in 2000. Well, I left in 2008. The crash happened the day I left, the stock market crash, and we went straight into the recession. It was a really great timing, Nicole. And so I spent 2009 and some subsequent years just in the trenches talking about what I was passionate about retaining employees, learning how to connect with people, what that was going to take, how we needed to lead a little differently than we were leading before, how work was evolving, all that exciting stuff about what I called the future at work, and became a credentialed coach with ICF in the process. And just, it's been a crazy 13 years of really fast track major change. And here we are, all the things that I saw were going to happen in my research actually did happen. We are in this, we're now in the great resignation because of the fact that things didn't change fast enough. And so that's how I got where I'm at, because I was lucky. I had vision and I saw what was happening, and I made the leap, and I couldn't be happier. I get to do what I love every single day, working with people who are passionate about themselves and their growth and their transformation and how they want to lead better.
You have such a talent for helping leaders and people find their passion too. And it's just so evident in everything that you do. I want to backtrack a little bit. So you were like, man, there's a struggle here with millennials and we're not doing it right. Like,
right.
What exactly were you seeing when you were working in that corporate company?
Well, I mean, the corporate cultures that we had built were not building trust with the workforce that was coming in, and I've identified a trust factor. I have this big equation, which really is nothing more than a play on words, but the key leadership traits that were missing were collaboration, authenticity, transparency, vulnerability, and respect. we were leading in a very different way that didn't include any of those 5 things. And I knew that leadership had to start making some major change to build trust and to really create connection with the people that we work with. We really, in my era, everything was transactional at work. You were there to do a job, not be a person. And so we led almost like we were leading widgets, not people. And we are now at the point at work where, we've gone through the industrial age and the agricultural age, the industrial age, the knowledge age, the digital age, and we're at the human age right now. We're at the point where things are automated and technology has come to a certain point. It's the personal people part that's going to take us to the next level. And most people aren't equipped enough to figure that out and to create that connection. And so, I've been fortunate enough to work with amazing people that have given me amazing tools that I use in my business to help them create that connection in those relationships with the people that they work with. And, the biggest change, Nicole, is that it wasn't okay to be that human person when I was coming up through work. You really, park your stuff at the door, leave your feelings at home and get in there and do your job. And that's not where work is anymore. And we have to give permission to leaders to be humans and to learn how to relate to humans in a way that connects and validates them. Brene Brown, who I'm a certified Dare to Lead facilitator on her team, and as the feeling created when people feel seen, heard, valued. I would add the word understood, and they can give and receive without judgment. And they derive strength and sustenance from those relationships. I mean, if you look at Maslow, those are basic human needs. That's what everyone wants. That's what we desire as human beings. We were never given permission to want those things at work or to have those things at work. And work has changed. And so we're all looking for our work lives to be as rich as our personal lives and for them to intersect. And so that connection piece and the understanding of those emotions and experiences is really missing. And that's kind of the work that I help leaders do.
Not kind of, like, you're amazing at it. And you definitely do that. I think you mentioned Brene Brown a few times since we've been working together over the past 7 or so months. And you recommended that I read a book, Dare to Lead. And it is by far the best book that I've read this year in 2021. I will go back and read it again for sure. And it's a new concept for a lot of leaders to dive into, right? Like,
Yeah.
Hey, let's figure out our emotions, why we're feeling a certain way. Let's collaborate. Let's get all of our staff bought in on the vision together. And
exactly.
It's amazing what happens. One of the reasons why we even booked this podcast was you did a pod with some of us, and Jason and I were the only entrepreneurs in the group. Everyone else worked for corporate America. And it was so interesting to hear them say what they were saying, like their perspective and our perspective when we were talking about this specific subject with connection and buy-in and how meetings work, right? Like,
yes. Yeah.
The meeting part was the biggest driver. Like, Michelle, we're going to jump on a podcast because it was such a new concept for them. Like, wait a second, I can have input in a meeting where there's senior leadership involved. And it's not this person at the top makes all the decisions and then the people below them execute those decisions. People below that are the ones that do the decision, do the execution. And it's just this trickle down. It's like, no, hey, everyone has a different lens. And if we can combine these lenses, we can get a 360 view on the situation and actually create a service, product, whatever your business is, that's going to be so much more impactful and help people so much faster.
That's right. That's right. And just to give you, talk about collaboration. Collaboration is, there's lots of definitions about collaboration, but, though in the evolution of work, my dad's time period was control and command. The boss is the boss. The boss has all the answer. The boss tells everybody what to do. And then when boomers came along, we created this thing called consensus, which, we're all going to sit in meetings ad nauseum and come up with a plan together. And then if we can't, we'll have a subcommittee, and then they will have another meeting. And all of the parts about consensus and the work to get things done. But then we'll tell everybody what the answer is. And collaboration just turns that on its head and says, what if we do it from the bottom up? What if we actually use everybody in the organization to figure out, rather than showing up to a meeting, and this has happened, I've had millennials that I've worked with have said, they show up with an idea that says, okay, here's what we're going to do. And I'm like, well, you could have just sent me an email. We don't have to be in this meeting. You've already made the decision. Obviously, we have nothing to do with it. So how do we better collaborate or co-create together with our teams? And then when we do that, guess what happens? There's buy-in, there's alignment. People are excited. They own it. They're not told what to do. They're actually creating it themselves.
I would say, as a company with a mentoring program, like, the pieces that we've added in 2021 have been some of the best. Were not my ideas. They were someone else. It's like, hey, here's a gap. And the way we've created our culture is, you see a gap, you figure out a couple of solutions, and we talk about that to figure out what's the best solution to this problem. Not, here's a problem, Nicole, now deal with it. Like,
absolutely. And it takes all the pressure off you as a leader, doesn't it?
That's it, right? Like,
Yeah.
Sometimes as leaders, you're so far removed from what's actually going on, and you're not going to be able to come up with the best solution because you're not in it. And when you're not in it, how could you possibly know what to do?
That's correct. And we've built, one of the things that we've done over time is we've built these incredible hierarchies and silos and layers inside organizations, and they're impenetrable sometimes, because you have leaders that say, I think I have to know that. I have to know what the answer is. And they've got so much pressure. Most of my coaching clients, that they end up with that pressure on themselves, because they're just so, I have to have the best answer. I have to know, I have to have all the information. Well, what if you don't?
You probably said that to me 50 times in the first month that we worked together. Like, Nicole, you don't have the answer right now, and that's okay. Like, what if you didn't have to have the answer? Like, why don't you just sit and be patient? And for people like me, patience is not a virtue, and I'm not good at it. And I like to get things done and mark them off and move on to the next thing. And in that season, there's no way that was going to happen.
No, because you just get to the point where you can't do anymore. Right. And so a lot of coaching is, letting go. Right. A lot of it is figuring out, how can I use the amazing talent I have around me? How do I make that safe for me and safe for them? And really innovate in a better way, right? Get to the point where we can really create something without all this pressure. It's the pressure that we put on ourselves that gets in the way.
And the cool thing is, when you do that, you innovate something that everyone is proud of, and that's actually the solution to the problem that you're going to solve, not just from one lens. One of the things that we did recently was a pod on positive intelligence, PQ. Mm-hmm. And I love there's so much mental health stuff going on right now. Like, so many people are struggling, and this honestly helped us be able to reframe a lot of things that were going on to make it be seen as an opportunity instead of like, oh man, this thing's going on. Talk to me about PQ and the pods that you've done, and specifically the 6-week mental fitness pod that we did.
Sure. So this program was created by an incredible man, Shirzad Shemaine, and it is an amalgamation, I guess, is the best way I can describe it, of so many tools. I talk a lot and work a lot with my clients on emotional intelligence and how you have to have self-awareness, self-management, awareness of others, and really be able to manage relationships. And those constructs are very, very intense, right? There's 18 constructs to emotional intelligence. Then we also do a lot of work with, DISC and MBTIs and personality works and all of these different other tools that are available to us. And the great thing about what Shirzad has done in his research is he has really put together a system, an operating system, if you will, that takes the best of all of it and creates a way for everybody to see themselves and what he calls their saboteurs, and reframe to their sages, their very best self. The saboteurs are the things that we have individually that get in our way, and create a mental roadmap in our brain that automatically goes to certain areas. I've got another certification I have in conversational intelligence, which is the neuroscience of communication. And so there's a lot of brain work in both of their works. And what happens is that we create these constructs in our brain that are automatic roadmaps, and there's nothing happening consciously. It's all automatic. And so when we start these habits with these saboteurs, we don't have a way to stop that roadmap. It automatically goes from A to B in our brain, and we are now reacting, and we don't even know that we did that. And so what the 6-week program does is it talks about mental muscle. It's a fitness program, which I think your listeners can probably relate to, but it's mental fitness in terms of what are we like when I automatically, head to the cabinet when I'm stressed and look for some carbs, why am I doing that? Like, let's interrupt that pattern and change that behavior. And so the really great part about and you can talk about it too, Nicole, as you went through it, it creates it's a 6-week program. So little time to establish a routine, and it starts to rewire your brain. It gives you some tools, some actual physical tools, if you will, as well as it's not just talking about things, it's actually doing things differently. And it starts to rewire your brain. You're not, super Jedi at the end where you're all on sage, because it's only 6 weeks, but it does give you the foundation to start to rewire and reframe the way you think. And as you said, eventually turn the automatic thought patterns that we have into possibility. What if it isn't true, right? What if I could do it a different way? What if there is a different answer? And so we automatically have thought patterns that over time, in my case, a long time, have become really ingrained habits. The good news is our brains are neuroplastic. We can change the way they're wired. And that is the tool, this tool. This tool actually helps you in your own individual way, whatever your saboteur is, to be able to rewire.
Okay, so I want to put this into some practical things that happened during this, because that was a lot. And honestly, I think you did an amazing job explaining, because there's so much that goes into like that 6-week program. But basically, in my mind, what it did was forced us as a pod, so like the group of people that we did it with, forced us to slow down and be really intentional and mindful with our decisions and how we respond to things. And also understanding why we would automatically initially want to respond a certain way.
Mm-hmm.
And the saboteur, so there were 2 main ones in our group. 2 of us were high achievers, right? Like we just are go, And the other girl and I, we got along great. We saw the view. We saw the world in the same way. Like, yep, that makes sense. I knew what she was going to say. She knew what I was going to say. My husband was also in the group, Jason, who you know very well. Him and the other person in our 4-person pod were, what was their
Pleasers.
Like
They were
pleasers.
pleasers. Yeah.
So they saw the world in the same way. Right. And it was just so funny to like watch the one girl who we saw the world the same way, how we were like looking at them like, okay, I understand why you said that, but that is not even close to that is not what I was telling myself during that situation. And it was cool in a way to know that we were not alone. And it was a safe place for us to just openly communicate about what was going on, how we interpreted the information that was coming to us through the app. And it was just, Jason and I really enjoyed it. And it honestly allowed us to slow down and help us with the mental health stuff that we were struggling with. Now, at one point, I remember when Jason and I joked about it recently, like I was going through a bad week at one point, and I remember sitting on there and you had called on me and Jason's like, Nicole's just going to sit here today. She's not going to say anything. And it came down to like, you know, my biggest thing was high achiever, and something had happened in work that I had literally no control over. And and it came down to what Brene Brown talks about, Brene talks about with, vulnerability and holding people accountable. And I was like battling because I'm like, my morals and
your values
were not in a line. And it was a struggle, but I understood why it was happening, which gave me a little bit of grace in some way.
Yes.
That makes sense.
Yes, absolutely. And just, well, first of all, we all had common language, and it was amazing because we had 4 people in that pod, right? There are 10 saboteurs, but we only identified the 2 tops, which was hilarious that it all worked out that way, because we never know going in what saboteurs are going to show up. But of the 10, there were two and two, and that made for really a lot of fun, because as we compared notes, and there was kind of an opposite effect, which was really cool as well. So it did give us the opportunity really to have the common language, right? And then focus on the tools that we could use to kind of reframe, redirect, and refocus on different thought patterns, different ways to do it. Not an easy process, but man, once you know something you didn't know, you can't unknow it, which is, kind of my job, right? is like, oh man, I never saw that before. And so that was the fun part for me, is watching you guys kind of unfold before us. It was great.
It was so applicable to every aspect of life, like with the business, even like kids got brought up. We all have kids that were in that group, and just how parenting and just so many different things were brought up to be able to take the knowledge that we learned in this pod and be able to apply it in all aspects of life. When you do these pods, so for people that are listening, when you do these pods, who's a good candidate to join a pod like this or join this 6-week mental fitness program?
Well, anybody that's interested in understanding more about who they are and how they work and how they interact with other people. If you're interested in that kind of work, it's growth work. Sometimes it's cope work, right? Like, how do I cope better? How do I even get through the day? Because everything's driving me crazy. I'm overwhelmed. I'm in this extreme stress. But you have to be willing to do the work. That's the key. There is homework that, this is you have an app to listen to interact with. You have to spend an hour a week listening to or watching and listening to a video, and then we spend time in a pod. So there is a little time you have to spend, but anybody who wants to understand themselves better and have better coping mechanisms to connect with other people.
Yeah. I think, again, it goes to all aspects, right? Like you can apply this to, nutrition coaches, to coaching clients. You can apply it to your personal life as, business and personal, how you deal with relationships. There's so many different things. So I think this is a really great opportunity for people who are looking to invest in themselves and just be able to cope better, be able to handle situations better, and just equip themselves with the tools they need. Michelle,
Well,
I
yeah,
know.
let
Oh,
me
go
let
ahead.
me just let me just tap that a little bit better, put it into sections for you. On the personal side, it could be stress, wellness, parenting, relationships, career planning, self-actualization, any type of, furthering myself. On the professional side, it could be emotional intelligence, conflict management, creativity, peak performance, leadership, time management, change management, and coaching. And then on the functional side, like for example, if you're in sales, it could be better prospecting, better client presentations, better closing, better resilience. So depending upon where you are in life and what you're doing, it could have several different applications.
And we saw that
Yep.
happen
Yep.
in all aspects for the
Hmm.
people on the pod. And I know all of us truly enjoyed it. I know on our last pod meeting, we're like, wait, is it over? Like, are we really breaking up now? And we decided not to. We have a
Yeah.
meeting soon,
Yeah.
which I'm excited about. But Michelle, I think there are going to be people who are listening to this and saying, man, I need to invest in myself and do some personal development in 2022. We're going to put a link to a Google form for people to fill out so that they can book a call with you. I
Okay.
mean, I truly believe you are such an amazing leader and you have such a skill for helping people find their passion and be able to live out their best life so that they can inspire others. And I'm just so thankful for all that you've done for us and our family. And I'm hopeful that you'll be able to inspire even more people in the future to do the same thing.
Well, it's really nice to have a reason and a purpose, right? And so this is my encore career, if you will, and I wanted to make it one that absolutely filled me at the same time as I can help others. So hopefully it does come through that I'm loving what I do.
Absolutely. Michelle, thank you for all your knowledge. We will have you back on the podcast at some point because we need to talk more about Brené's book that was just released
Oh,
on
oh,
emotional intelligence as well, and everything that she's talked about. She just released a new book. What is it called again?
it's called Atlas of the Heart. And it's in three sections, but in one of the sections, Brene goes through 87 emotions and experiences that we that we that really came out in her research. She's a researcher, but above everything. And of those 87, she really nails what they are and gives language around how to identify when we're feeling those emotions. Given the reason that the driver for this was in her research in that she's done, she did some work with Oprah's group, and in that research of I think it was over 100,000 people, the most emotions that people could describe was three that they were feeling, and where we are right now. Coming out of the pandemic, coming through a very difficult time that we're in this just tremendous change, we need to be able to language how we feel. Not having a way to describe how we feel is crippling our society. And so being able to learn about these emotions and experiences and to put and what Brene does is she gives us language to be able to see and to feel that, and then by by learning more about emotional agility, right, and learning more about, excuse me, not emotional agility, emotional literacy, being able to say it, being able to communicate, this is how I feel, with each other. That's something that we don't know how to do in this country. Where we are tragically, with emotions is we have people suffering and they cannot identify it, and they don't have any way to express it. And there's no way you can actually fix it if you can't A, see it, and B, talk about it. So and she gives it, the example she gives in the book is, it's like this. It's like you have a terrible pain in your neck. You can't move, and you go to the doctor and they ask you what's wrong. And then all of a sudden they put duct tape over your mouth and you can't express what's wrong. What are you going to do about that? If you can't tell what's wrong with you, like, they won't be able to fix your neck. And this is where we are with emotions and experiences. We can't even talk about them.
Which I think is such a struggle because so many people are struggling right now with mental health.
Yes.
So many people. And if we can't express it and we don't seek help, like, I can tell you, I was probably one of those people who only had 3 emotions. And then I started working with a therapist and she's like, no, how do you really feel? How does that make you feel? And I'm like, okay, can we just stop with the feelings? Like, I get it.
I want to talk about feelings, right?
Like, just fix me. But in order to like get better, you have to be able to talk about this stuff, and it's okay. And if we can destigmatize mental health and people get help and are able to talk about their emotions, I think that we'll be in a better place as a society. We'll be better leaders for businesses. You'll be able to connect with more people and help more people and seek out your mission better.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's the key. This is the key. Unlocking this is a really big piece. So it's called Atlas of the Heart. We'll talk about it again in another time, but I do encourage everybody to go check that book out because it's a masterpiece. I think she's got like 7 #1 New York Times bestsellers, but this one's going to blow it away.
Wow. All right. Michele, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. And thank you so much for all that you do to help leaders like us be better.
My pleasure. Thank you so much, Nicole. It was so much fun.
I hope you enjoyed that episode with Michele. If you are looking for more information about PQ or the Dare to Lead intensive leadership training that Michele does, you can click the link in the show notes to find out more information, fill out a form, and get in contact with her. She's absolutely amazing, and I would 100% recommend her services. As promised, I want to talk about a few leadership books and podcasts that I personally love. One of them was a recommendation. My #1 recommendation was actually from Michele. It's a book called Dare to Lead by Brené Brown. In this book, it really talked about vulnerability and why you have to be a little bit vulnerable as a leader in your organization. I think sometimes we think as leaders that we have to have all the answers or have all this stuff together, but the truth is we're all human and we make mistakes, and owning up to those mistakes and being transparent is so important as a leader. It's going to increase buy-in with your staff and the people that know, love, and trust you already. I think sometimes we hold ourselves to this standard and don't give ourselves a little bit of grace. We have to remember we're all human. All right, the second one, another book that I really loved is Communicating for Change by Andy Stanley. It's a really great book. Get it on Audible. Also, Dare to Lead is on Audible too. That's what I personally do every single plane ride is turn on an Audible and listen to a book. There are 2 podcasts that are also really good. And the first one is Craig Gushel. He's actually a pastor. He has an amazing podcast. He wrote a few books too. Really great, inspiring leader. Really enjoy his leadership podcast. The last one is one of my mentors, Michael Hyatt. He really helped us be able to streamline our vision and help us move the needle forward. One of the things that he implements is something called the Big 3. I talked a lot about it at the State of the Union, how we do our Big 3. From 2018 to 19 and from 19 to 20, our business doubled year over year. It was crazy growth, and I really can contribute a lot of that to the streamlined vision that we had from implementing the Big 3 that came from Michael Hyatt. Basically what that means is, what are 3 big initiatives that you want to accomplish in the year, in the new year? It's a brand new year. People are wanting to do things to be better business people, be better personally, professionally for your business. Like, what things are you working on? If you set a million different goals, it can be really overwhelming and you likely won't achieve very many of them. But if you keep your focus narrow and you really even build some stretch goals around those things, you're going to be able to move the needle forward so much faster. So we do something called the Big Three. If you're interested to learn more about that, you can check out last week's episode where we talk about it. And also you can get the State of the Union recording if you click the link in the show notes. I hope you enjoyed this podcast. I think the biggest takeaway here is that as a leader, you have to be a little bit vulnerable. You have to, have collaborative discussions with your team. The higher you move up, the further you're away from really seeing the blind spots. And you could completely launch and spend a lot of time, money, and energy into investing something and launching something that is actually not going to help the business. It might hurt it. So having different perspectives is so, so important. I think, if anything, 2021 taught me a lot about, getting collaborative leadership and getting everyone involved. And it really came from a lot of it from Michele and working with her. So if you're looking for help, highly recommend her. Hope you enjoyed this podcast. And I hope at the end of 2022, we are all even more incredible leaders to move our vision forwards and empower more and more people to get healthy through fitness and nutrition. We'll see you back here next week.